It's a great honor to be here and to address you on this important issue. European Parliament was the second international institution that recognized the ISIS atrocities against religious minorities as genocide, just a few days after the Council of Europe. The EP resolution not only denounced the atrocities as genocide, but also called for actions and called for the UN Security Council referral to the International Criminal Court. However, today, almost 5 months later, this step has not been taken yet. The EP resolution was followed by vivid discussions on the topic and further recognitions of genocide by the US House of Representatives, US Secretary of State, UK House of Commons, and the Australian House of Representatives. Unfortunately, this is not enough. Decisive steps have to follow such recognition. And those steps are not only military or humanitarian assistance, but also steps to bring the perpetrators to justice. And this step has not been taken yet. 2 weeks ago, the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Syrian Arab Republic released a report recognizing the ISIS atrocities against Yazidis as genocide. This is a big step forward, as the Commission is the first UN body to clearly brand the ISIS atrocities as genocidal. The Commission indicated that they managed to collect enough evidence to help with future prosecutions. But this is also something that should be done in relation to other religious minorities, including Christians. It is important to note that the report focuses only on the Yazidis. It does not consider all religious minorities and picks Yazidis as the only group that is subject to genocide. As far as genocide is concerned, each case in relation to each protected group has to be considered individually. Therefore, the next step would be to ensure that the Commission or any other UN body considers the atrocities committed against Christians and other religious minorities. The recognition of genocide against Yazidis does not stop further considerations of the ISIS atrocities against other religious minorities. In the case of the ISIS atrocities, the recognition of genocide against one group is not enough. The report of the Commission called upon the UN Security Council to refer the situation to the ICC or to establish an ad hoc tribunal. A part of this report was presented at the UN Security Council 1 week ago. However, no indication was made whether this step will be taken. And as we know, the situation in Syria and Iraq is catastrophic, remains catastrophic, and has led to one of the worst humanitarian crises in decades. The number of Christians has dropped from 2 million to 1 million in Syria, and from 1.4 million to under 260,000 in Iraq. And similar fate is being faced by other religious minorities as well. There is evidence to confirm that ISIS has committed torture, mass murder, kidnappings, sexual enslavement, systematic rape, sexual abuse of girls and women, and predominantly belonging to religious minorities. ISIS has documented the specific intent to destroy Christians and other religious minorities in Syria and Iraq in its official propaganda videos and newspapers, including Dapik, the official ISIS magazine, used for propaganda and recruitment. The atrocities committed against Christians and other religious minorities in Syria and Iraq are undoubtedly crimes of persecution, so crimes against humanity. However, consider the systematic pattern of coordinated attacks, the magnitude and intensity of the crimes, and the resulting disappearance of the Christian communities in Syria and Iraq. There is enough evidence to confirm that those atrocities are meeting the threshold of genocide. And this genocide has to be recognized for what it is. However, recognizing genocide is not enough. actions have to follow. And the main and most relevant steps must be taken by international institutions. The UN Security Council can take two different approaches to the situation in the Middle East. First, the UN Security Council could establish a commission of experts on genocide for the Middle East to consider the evidence, to obtain further evidence, and to prepare an opinion. Subsequently, based on this opinion, the UN Security Council could establish an ad hoc tribunal. This route was followed in case of Bosnia and Rwanda. And there are numerous benefits of this approach. First, the UN Security Council, in such case, defines the role and the responsibility of the Commission of Experts, and therefore can adjust them to address the needs of the situation or the specific case. This also applies to an ad hoc tribunal. Second, both the Commission of Experts and the ad hoc tribunal are established only to perform this one targeted function. This means that the work is focused on a certain issue. It follows that they may be more efficient and more productive than any other body with more general approach. The flexibility offered by this route may be the sensible option for cases of international non-state actors and cross-border terrorism with foreign fighters. Despite the existence of a permanent international court, the idea to establish an ad hoc tribunal is not extinct and is reintroduced periodically. Alternatively, the UN Security Council can also pass a resolution referring the situation in the Middle East to the ICC. While this was attempted in 2014, there are various factors suggesting that if such a resolution was tabled now, the result would be different. The draft resolution from 2014 referring the situation in Syria to the ICC was predominantly directed against Assad regime and crimes committed during the Syrian civil war. For this reason, the draft resolution failed, as Russia and China believed that the Syrian government could resolve the issues without external intervention. Also, the draft resolution from 2014 predated the rise of ISIS and the establishment of the so-called caliphate. Since the draft resolution in 2014, the situation has changed dramatically. ISIS has established so-called caliphate in many regions of Syria and Iraq. The death toll and the humanitarian crisis have reached new levels. The UK, the US, and Russia have commenced military interventions. Given the current realities of the situation in Syria and Iraq, it is likely that a resolution targeting ISIS and referring the crimes committed by ISIS to the ICC would be passed without veto. And also considering the UN Security Council successfully referred the situation in Darfur in 2005 and the situation in Libya in 2011 to the ICC, states should renew their efforts to have the UN Security Council refer the situation in Syria and Iraq to the ICC. In relation to the ICC, the wording of the Rome Statute suggests that the ICC prosecutor could initiate investigations, at least the preliminary examination, into the genocidal acts in the Middle East. On 8 April 2015, the ICC prosecutor made a statement concerning ICC's crimes. The ICC prosecutor confirmed that the Office of the Prosecutor has considered communications received alleging crimes committed by ISIS. However, the ICC prosecutor concluded that the jurisdictional basis for opening a preliminary examination into the situation is too narrow at this stage. In any event, the ICC prosecutor can reevaluate the stance by taking into consideration any further information and evidence about crimes committed by at least foreign fighters in the Middle East. and the prosecutor was encouraged to initiate preliminary examinations of crimes committed by foreign fighters in Iraq in a recent statement made by the Special Rapporteur on minority issues. We have to remember that the UN Security Council was specifically established to maintain international peace and security. This role cannot be fulfilled if the UN Security Council remains silent or acts inadequately or too late to reports of genocide. The ICC was specifically established to investigate and prosecute genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and crimes of aggression. However, if the ICC continues to rely on the argument of too narrow jurisdiction, the ICC will become an empty symbol of justice. Recent years have witnessed the emergence of powerful terrorist groups, notably ISIS in the Middle East and Boko Haram in West Africa. Despite various steps taken to combat them, the terrorist groups continue unchecked by effective deterrence or punishment. While Boko Haram's atrocities are being considered by the Office of the Prosecutor to the ICC, as Nigeria is a party to the Rome Statute, ISIS remains unchallenged by either the UN Security Council or the ICC. This may suggest that a new international mechanism is needed. But of course, the initiative has to come from states. States can urge the UN Security Council to take steps to obtain further evidence, to establish an ad hoc tribunal, or to refer the situation to the ICC. States could also refer the situation in Syria and Iraq directly to the ICC. There should be no hesitation to take those steps, and especially since there is a real danger that Christian communities in Syria and Iraq will disappear from the region. The Convention of Genocide was intended to be the world's united response to such genocidal atrocities as committed by the Nazi regime. However, it is clear that the Convention on Genocide has repeatedly failed the international community. It is failing Christians in the Middle East, just as it failed protected groups in Beirut, Rwanda, Cambodia, Bosnia. The wording of the convention is weak and vague, leaving too much discretion to the states and to the United Nations to ever be effective. The Rome Statute and the ICC seems to be a better response to the problem. However, their jurisdiction is optional. The genocidal acts against Christians and other religious minorities in Syria and Iraq are not novelty to which the international community doesn't know how to respond. After the Holocaust, the genocide in Beirut, Bosnia, and Rwanda, in addition to many other tragedies in the last century, the international community should now be able to recognize genocidal practices and act to prevent it. However, this is not happening. Recognizing the atrocities committed against Christians in Syria and Iraq as genocide is the first step towards an adequate administration of justice, reconciliation, and healing. There are numerous steps that the international community and individual states can take to utilize the existing mechanisms. However, political will is needed, and this political will is still absent. Thank you.